Morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Good
Perfect.
morning.
Lovely. Thank you. So happy New Year to you. So today we're going to do things just slightly different, not much, but just slightly. We are going to talk about the word of the month that we had in December, but we're also going to talk about the word of the month that we're having in January, which we don't usually do. And the reason for that is because the word for the month of January is going to be our word for the entire year. Even though we will have different words each month, they're all going to be around the word intuition. So 2024 is our year to practice intuition. So I thought it would be an okay thing to do it this way because peace is an intuitive process. You know, if it were just something intellectual and we can go, oh, okay, this is the way to peace, we would follow the 1, 2, 3, and 4 steps, and we would arrive at peace and we would have peace. But peace is not something that we can learn by intellectualizing it. Peace is something that we intuit. Intuition is something that is not, it's not a mental process like we think of mental processes. It is a way of being. Intuition requires deep, deep quiet. Now, when we're in a state of peace, it too requires a deep feeling, a space of quiet. So these two things I thought were all right to bring together because they are very, very similar. So peace, oh my goodness, peace. You know, like after you've had a hard time with something and it resolves itself, and you feel that really deep sense of relief. It's like, right in that moment, when you feel that deep relief, that's peace. And that can be replicated, that can be lived in. But first, we had to understand, what does peace even feel like? Because, you know, quite often people see peace as nothing. Like you're asking me to give up, or you know, you just want me to just to kind of like say, okay. No, peace is something. Otherwise it wouldn't be a virtuous quality. It's something that we have to learn to attain. And how do we do that? Through emptiness. This is very difficult because, first of all, we're Americans. We don't do emptiness. We have to have full shopping carts at all times, you know? And I'm not saying anything bad about us. I'm just saying, you know how we are. We're always going from one thing to another thing. We have lots of big lists. We have to do this. We have to do that, you know? And it's not easy to find peace when we're running from thing to thing, trying to fill our emptiness up. Because sometimes not only us, but everyone on the planet feels like emptiness means that there isn't any love, or there isn't any laughter. There isn't that feeling of deep passion. And that's not true either. I would say I'm very passionate about the practice of peace. So that means that I acknowledge that my inner peace can be ruffled at any moment by something somebody says or they do, or something that they don't say and they don't do, and I was expecting them to say or do something. My peace can be disrupted. But my peace is my responsibility. Nobody can give me peace. No matter how peaceful the other person is, they can't give it to me. When you sit with someone and you feel their peace, it's like a good mirror, you know? You could feel their peace, but they can't give it to you. So if you feel peace emanating off of someone, let yourself kind of find a way to, it's not merely imitating it, but bringing it to you. letting it flow through you. When peace meets peace, it's much easier to stay in peace. But like I was saying, we have a lot of situations every single day that are very loud and very disagreeable. And even if you don't leave your home, you live in here, where it can be very loud and very disagreeable, very oppositional. You don't have to go outside and be around others who are opposing you or even opposing one another in front of you. We have so much opposition inside of our minds. It's very difficult to understand peace, much less to practice it. So peace, inner peace, this is what we're striving for. World peace, well, we all have an aspiration for world peace, of course. But when we talk about world peace, it's usually, yeah, but that probably is not going to happen. And why do we say that? Because we know that we don't have perfect peace within ourselves, and we know that there are people who really don't practice peace at all. So I say this because we want to help ourselves. If you want to help the world, if you want to give service to the world, the best thing that you could possibly do for yourself is to practice peace. So what is this thing that I'm talking about? The practice of peace. So when we feel anxious about something, our bodies feel anxious. Not only our minds, but our bodies feel anxious. And you can feel it. You can feel your eyes wanting to dart. You can feel yourself fidgety. You can feel yourself wanting to move around. All kinds of things. The body becomes very much involved with this word anxious, which anxiousness can build and build and build to anxiety, and even to very high anxiety. And how that happens is it happens by the way that we process our thinking. Many of us, most of the time, are in opposition. And what I mean by that is that we're problem solving by, yes, I think I should do that. But what if it doesn't work out? Maybe I should do that. Oh my God, I don't know what I want to do. I better call up 10 friends and see what they think. Oh, now I've got their 10 ideas in me, and maybe I should do what they're saying, but they don't agree either. So now we're like pulled in all of these different directions because we didn't understand how to empty ourselves out. So intuition is not about projecting ideas out into the world. Intuition is about being so quiet inside of yourself that you feel that which is already present, but your senses don't feel it. So have you heard these words before? Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, these words? So clair means to go beyond. So the word psychic, you've heard this word too, right? So psychic is involved with the senses. It picks things up in the world and the atmosphere around you through your senses. Intuition doesn't need your physical senses. It doesn't need your body. Intuition goes beyond your senses. So we have this thing called clairvoyance. So we can see with our eyes. Clairvoyance is when we go beyond what we normally see with our eyes and we see into a situation. You might see auras, or you might see spirits, because they're always there in the atmosphere. But you see, our senses are limited. Clairaudience, you hear people talking, but you know that you can hear people talking, but you aren't necessarily listening. Deep listening is when you go beyond just the physical hearing of sounds. So our minds are always bringing in all kinds of information and processing it all the time. and we're putting it together to find answers. But you see, I'm talking about learning to problem solve with this thing that we call our intuition, and people get it mixed up with psychic. It's not the same thing. All animals on this planet are psychic. They use their senses. And they can go beyond because they can feel things that we can't see or hear. But it's still their senses, which is they're using their minds. Intuition is different. Intuition is only in humans. And even though we're all intuitive, we have this thing about the word intuition where we treat it like it's a little crazy. Or only people like that girl, this girl here is intuitive. That's kind of crazy to me, in that sense. To think like that is like kind of out there a little bit, even though people think I'm out there a little bit. So I say this to you because intuition is about the practice of silence in your mind. Can you already feel the difficulty in what I'm wanting to relay to you? Because you live in your mind just like I live in mine. And we have to practice being quiet. Because we've associated being quiet with being lazy or doing nothing. It's not true. The reason this is so hard, the reason we say things like, oh, it's just lazy, you're doing nothing, is because it is so difficult to be quiet. It is so difficult to have a quiet mind. And we don't practice being quiet in our mind. We're not even aware that we're supposed to practice being quiet. We don't even realize that it's medicine to give to ourselves, to practice being quiet in the mind. You're probably even wondering, what does it even mean? What does it even feel like to have quiet in our minds? When you sleep, your mind is still going. We're having lots of dreams. We toss, we turn. We still don't even have perfect quiet there. Quiet is one of those things that we haven't really collectively learned to practice. Our minds are always trying to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And usually what that means is your mind is going to go back and forth and back and forth. And what happens in that process is you begin to visualize all kinds of incredible outcomes. If I choose this, this will probably happen. If I choose that, this will probably happen. And do you usually see the best outcomes when you're doing that? Don't you normally see the worst case scenarios? And then you ask somebody else, do you think that this bad thing will happen? Oh, well, it did happen to my cousin, and yeah, it could very well happen. And now you're like, oh yeah, that really could happen. Now you're in more of a deep quandary, and it's noisier in there because now you're visualizing all these worst case things that can happen to you, and you can't stop because it becomes addictive. Because fear is addictive. Once we get caught up in fear, then we start imagining all these worst case scenarios, and we actually can produce adrenaline to run through our bodies to make us feel like we got to get up and do something right now, as if a tiger is chasing us through the streets. And it is not. You're sitting in a chair in a room figuring it out. And it's a total noise bomb in your mind. There's no tiger chasing us. The tiger's in here. We have to learn to practice to be quiet so we become healthier problem solvers. more interested in what does peace really mean? What does it really feel like? To have peace in my body? I don't know. People will say, I don't even know what that feels like. How could I have peace? I have so many things going on in my life. Brrr. I have to think about these things all the time. What if this happens? It's going to get, but we all know exactly what I'm saying. And does that actually help you? We know it doesn't, but we all know we're going to do it tomorrow. So you see, I'm not saying anything here that's critical. I'm merely introducing to you how noisy we are. Very noisy. When you go into a library, they tell us to be quiet. Why? Because people are studying. They need that quiet to help them intuit what they're reading, to see it in their minds. It's very difficult to not only have a noisy mind, but to have a noisy outer space at the same time and find your answers. When you're not feeling well, you don't want people yelling around you. You need quiet to get better. To fall asleep, we need quiet to fall asleep, not only around us, but in our minds. When you're eating your dinner, you don't usually want to have like lots and lots of noise going on around you. You would prefer a more peaceful environment. When you're having a really deep conversation with someone that you really love, you don't want there to be a lot of noise going on around you. The deepest things that you will do in your life require quiet. Yet we're not cherishing the practice of quiet within our minds or in our space where we live or out in the world. We even have a lot of individuals who like to have a lot of noise going on all the time. I say noise, we call it background noise, whether it's in the car, in the house, or wherever, because we're so used to it. It's not easy. It's not easy. So I practice. Am I completely quiet? No, of course not. I'm in training, just like you guys are. I'm learning this every day. Every day, I'm helping myself to find a better sense of my quiet. Nobody wants to be reactionary, but we think that it's the way that it means. I'm just going to tell them how it is. Yeah. Yeah, and that'll really help. So I'm wanting to tempt you to want to taste quiet. I'm tempting you. How would it feel to just lay your head on the pillow and your mind is so quiet that you go into that deep, beautiful sleep and you stay there? You stay there until it's time to wake up. Imagine that for a moment. How would that feel? How would it feel to have a difficult conversation with someone where they too are practicing quiet and both of you are willing to take your time with the other one? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to be in your car when you're driving and you don't criticize a single person? What does that feel like? The only way we'll ever know it is through practice. It's practicing quiet. Every time that you practice quiet, you become a healthier human. Deep, deep quiet the deepest quiet that we'll experience. We call it meditation. Meditation and intuition are in a realm of very, very deep quiet. When I first started doing readings, this was back in the 80s. The 80s. Anyway, I worked at a psychic bookstore. Pardon me. And they had these little tables. Once a month, they had what's called a psychic fair. And they had these little tables that were set around their bookstore. And in the front of the bookstore, which is usually where they would sit my table, was right by the front door. So it's right off of Highway 101. Oh my gosh. So that door's opening and closing. People are coming in and they're registering. The dirt from the outside is coming in. That's where all of the chaos was. And that's usually where my table was. Now, I could have complained about it. I really didn't have time. I felt so grateful to have a place to practice my practice that I thought, okay, you can do this. So I had images, on my table. So when somebody would come to sit in front of me, I have 15 minutes with this person. 15 minutes. Of course, if you've ever had a reading with me, I usually go over. So my 15 minutes were usually 20, 25. And the person in charge would come get my attention and she would do this. Cut it off. But I was still learning. I still am. But then I was learning to be quiet because I'm wanting to listen to what the person is saying to me. But more importantly, I wanted to listen to what they weren't saying. What were they feeling? I was learning back then, my job was to listen, yes, to what they're physically saying to me, but to listen to what's going on in their heart. Heart to heart requires deep listening, and deep listening requires heart. You have to want to open. You have to want to receive. You have to want to be curious about that person's situation, how they're perceiving it. How are they feeling? If I sat there and criticized in my mind, oh, I can't believe they made this decision, I can't access my intuition. And neither can you. So in those days, I was learning to concentrate on one thing, that which is in front of me, because all this other stuff is happening all around me. And it was teaching me, even though it was bad conditions, people would say, how could you even tolerate? I would have asked for this table and I would have done that and I would have done that. Well, you know how it is when you have a difficult situation later on in your life, you look back on it and you realize what it taught you how to do. So I realized that situation of learning how to do what I do in the circumstances of all that noise and that chaos and people wanting answers to their deep problems in 15 minutes and to not want to solve everything for them, but just be able to do what I could do in those 15 minutes and be satisfied with it when I walked away. So when I walk away, to let go, I'm so sorry. Talking about doing readings puts me in that place.
feeling people's pain. I've never felt pain from another person that I didn't feel myself in some form. So talking to you about it brings that forth. So that pain is in me, but I have to find a quiet place for it. You see? So you have deep conversations with people also. And it's important to be quiet so that your mind isn't racing about what they should do or what they're supposed to do or what they haven't done. And this is why you're in that predicament. You're so ridiculous. We've gone through this before, without jumping into that space. But learn to receive without any fear that you're going to catch it. What you saw in me, that spontaneous eruption of emotion, was memory. Memory of different people's pain running through me. It doesn't make me out of balance. It's not my pain, but it's part of me now. I didn't go through it. The things that people tell me, I don't go through that. It's their story. But you know, when you read a story, how it can make you cry. It's not your story, but you're crying. Intuition makes our life more deep, more profound. It makes us more fearless. Because it helps us to remember that we're all going through so much every single day. And if we can learn to be at peace with ourselves, we can be at peace with others. If we're in opposition with them, or when we feel their struggles, and they're yelling at us and telling us how they feel, and instead of going, wow, just to be able to be still and let it move through you. Let it move through you. You're still feeling it like you're reading a story in a book. You feel it. But you have to learn to let it move through you and stay empty so that you know your own story. Your own story. Inner peace and intuition are always entwined, you see. And inner peace helps us so we don't have opposition because somebody disagrees with us. We don't have to be opposed to them. We don't have to be armed and ready to fight, tell them how bad they are with their thoughts. We don't have to. When we're doing this and we feel like we have to be like this and be on guard about other people having opposing thoughts to us, there is no inner peace here. And when there is no inner peace within a particular individual, their thoughts, their words, and their actions won't be loaded with peace either. And this is how we have skirmishes. And then the skirmishes turn into battles. And then the battles turn into wars. All war comes from warring inside. Every time you're at war with yourself and you feel like the world is against you or they're really awful and they're so horrible and it's directed directly at you, you have to help yourself with that. You have to make peace with yourself, not with them, because they don't want peace with you. The real question is, do you want peace with you? And in order to make peace with yourself, you must have compassion for yourself. Having compassion for yourself, recognizing your own pain, being quiet with yourself, treating yourself to some quiet. In other words, you're not going over it and 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 over it. Da 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 da. But you're helping yourself. Okay, let me breathe. Let me get quiet. You could request space. There's other people around you. Kindly let me be in my room by myself for a little while. You have a relationship with you. And that relationship is more important than any other relationship that you have. And yet it's the most ignored. If you make a better relationship with yourself, you treat yourself with dignity, you treat yourself with compassion. You are more prone to treat everyone in your vicinity the exact same way. If you treat yourself like, I'm so stupid, I can't even do anything, and da da da, and now they're telling me I'm stupid too. Okay. You know how that story is going to go. So we have to find this place where we have inner peace. We have to practice quiet. Because all of us are intuitive. All of us are intuitive. Because we're human beings. That's the only qualification to be a human being. That's it. And as far as I can tell, there's no aliens out here. So I would say we all qualify to be intuitive. It's just that the word was disgraced, shall I say, many hundred years ago. And it still is. It's like, oh, intuition. Yeah. Or it's relegated only to women. Which, that's kind of low too, It's ridiculous. We're all intuitive. But what does that mean? It means we feel one another. So that response that you saw in me, that was like just all these years listening to stories. There's so many stories. I have a library of stories inside of my heart. I've read a lot of books in that sense. Yeah. And I couldn't be more grateful. Couldn't be more grateful. Because when I listen to your stories and I see you reacting in all kinds of different ways and going over the cliff and freaking out and feeling really, really angry and really, really sad, I could be you at any time and have been. But when I feel it intuitively from you, it helps me to have more compassion for myself. Because I know we have the same stories, different circumstances, but the same stories. Anger feels like anger, regardless of what the circumstances are. Understanding feels like understanding. Relief, thank God, feels like relief. We have so much more in common than we realize. And the more we practice intuition, we begin to realize how alike we are. We're always talking about how different we are. And of course, we're individuals. We live in different bodies. We can't all have the exact same experience at the exact same time, but we do have the same experiences, just not at the same time. And we're all in different places with how we can process mentally as well as emotionally. And we all can get better by practicing inner peace. The more we think about battling the people that we work with, battling politically, battling out in the world, the more we become a battler. You become your own thoughts and your actions, You can't do anything with your hands that you are not thinking. You can't do anything with your voice. You can't say anything that you didn't think first. So the more quiet that you are, the more thoughtful you become. thoughtful. You become aware that if you say this to this other person, you could shatter them. And you don't. You realize you don't want to do that because you know how that feels. All of us feel this deep pain, but we all have had this experience, or we know somebody who has, where they can't wait to give that same terrifying experience to another person. This is called revenge. Where you have been deeply, deeply harmed, hurt, and you deal with it by wishing the same exact feeling upon another person. Intuition teaches us not to want to, the person who's really feeling the revengeful thoughts, you don't want to be that person. You really don't. But we've all had flashes of it. Some of us more than flashes. But you see, we get so tangled up in our passions and it's so noisy inside and we feel like I gotta do something. And so the first thing that comes into our mind is to cause them the same pain that we caused ourselves, that was caused to us. And where will be the peace there? Because then we say, see, there is no peace. You can't have peace. You can only enforce. You can only cause harm. You can only just get rid of other people. This entire year, we're going to work on intuition. We're going to work on ways to quiet our minds. And to know that you have a sea of pain and a sea of joy that lives inside of your heart. So today, my sea of pain welled up and showed you a wave. But I hope that you can feel my sea of joy. Because the joy comes from knowing that, thank God, I'm a human being and I have the power to overcome. Joy comes from recognizing you have the power to be better. You have the power to transform. You don't have to be stuck thinking about how bad that other person is year after year after year. If they would have done this, my life would have been completely different. If they would have done that, my life would have been so much better. No, your life would have been so much better if you would have relied on yourself to let that go and practice quiet within your own self. When we start putting blame onto another person and leaving it there, just leaving it there, that means that you think they have this power over you, like they have a chain around your neck and you have no freedom. And it's not true. But when you practice quiet, when you practice peace, you know you have a place inside of you that nobody can hurt. So I have this pain that you saw, but I hope that I'm showing you that there's a place inside of me that no matter what anybody does to me, it cannot be harmed. And I am not the only one. You have that place inside of you where you can never be harmed too. And you're like, what in the heck is she talking about? You have to be very, very quiet to know what I'm talking about. There is a place inside of us where we intuit that we've lived before, that we live now, that we will live again. We're beginning to intuit that we are forever people. We are forever people. We are temporarily housed in these bodies. We live on this incredibly beautiful planet. we're learning how to be self-aware of our eternal self. We can call it God, we can call it love, we can call it our soul. I respect any word that you call it. But intuition, the practice of intuition, teaches us that we can bear whatever's in front of us, whatever's going on with us, by practicing quiet, knowing that there's a place inside of us that can never be destroyed. And if we insist on destroying others, that energy will come right back to us. And we'll live with destruction until we can start to be really, really quiet inside of ourselves. The more that we're quiet, we can bear pain in a completely different way. We realize that we're part of the reason why this has even happened to us, the pain. You see how peace and intuition, they're like two hands. I may do certain things with my left hand and certain things with my right hand, but they work really well in this way, you know? This is when the two parts of me are at peace and working together. So I'm encouraging you to practice quiet. Intuition can only be learned through quiet. But I gave you that example of doing psychic fairs under all this pressure of helping people in 15 minutes, where everybody's yelling and screaming and talking and being chaotic and even walking by my table. I mean, there was just no privacy there. It was the way it was. But it taught me that even in the midst of all of that turmoil, there was a place that was quiet that I could access, and it was inside of me. It taught me that I don't have to have perfect surroundings in order to have quiet in me. It taught me that just because I'm in a storm with other people doesn't mean that I can't find the eye of that storm within myself. The eye of the storm, the perfect place where it's calm in here, is always present. But first of all, you have to want it. You have to want it.
Very good.
You have to want it. And by that, you'll start to seek it out. So perhaps you might want to practice things that are just kind of helping you throughout the day. Like breathing. You know me, I'm a real stickler for breathing. I'm a nag, I guess some people could say. Long and slow. 3 little words. Long and slow. And believe you me, you'll struggle with it. I practice it. I struggle with it. You'll struggle with it. But so what? If you want to get to the top of Mount Everest, you're going to struggle. It's not skipping time. No. If you want peace, it's the same thing as getting to the top of Mount Everest. You have to practice. You have to be strong. You have to learn to breathe, because the air at the top of Mount Everest, you have to learn how to breathe. So when you're there, you can live. So our lives are like climbing Mount Everest. Every day, there's something that knocks us off balance. Or no breathing. We all are mountain climbers. We all have Mount Everest in front of us every single day. And we all have to learn to breathe long and slow, so we can get to the top where the air is so thin that it's nearly impossible to even believe that we could even do that. But you can do that. You can do that. You're practicing long and slow. And as you practice self-control through your breath, you are also practicing self-control of your mind, because your mind is connected intimately with your breath. When you're scared, your breathing is like, right? See, it's a reflection. When you're at peace, your breath will tell you where you are. It's your compass to peace. Your breath is your compass to peace. Pay attention to it. Is it erratic? Is it deep? Is it shallow? What is it? It will show you where your mind is. Because you can only be in the state of mind that your breath, the state that it's in. So even though they're three little words, long and slow, and you're like, we'll see. Okay. But once you start practicing it, you'll start to see that you're stronger, that you can bear the little things out a little deeper. Sometimes we just can't even bear anything. Very hard on us. And that's with every human being. We all have to learn to bear things out. We do. That's part of the power to overcome. Power to overcome. Intuition is our ability as human beings to feel the answers that are always in the air. They're always here. People are talking to me when we're in session, but I listen to what they're not saying. It's the space between the words that interests me the most. How long is this space between this word and that word? What does the silence actually feel like? Because we use words to describe all kinds of things, but it's the space between the words that intrigue me, that I'm interested in, because that's where you hide. And you came to play hide and seek with me when you see me. So my job is to look in those little spaces to see where you are and to let you know that you're all right. That really you do have this. It's just that you keep telling yourself that you're in competition with this and that and all these things are oppositional and nothing's going right. And you've just created a whirlwind and you just needed somebody to tell you, look, you got this space in here. And if you go in there and you trust that space, you'll have relief. And when that relief will make you strong, like you feel after you've been sick and you've recovered and you feel strong. If you've had grief and you went through the process, but you know there's a place where now you are stronger because you went through it. And that space is quiet. And it's the part that we neglect because it's invisible. We always want proof. Well, practice peace and you will have proof. If you don't practice peace, it'll be another intellectual thing that you could go back and forth. Is that true or not true? I wonder what other people say. How about this? Da, 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 da. You could live like that for the rest of your life. Or you could begin to remember that we are mountain climbers and we all have Mount Everest in our life. And it's very difficult to breathe at the top of Mount Everest unless you've practiced. So whatever you're climbing, whatever's facing you, whatever difficulty is in your life right now, that's Mount Everest, as I'm using it as that, as an example. You have to breathe your way through it. Be aware of your breath and while you're driving. Be aware of your breath all the time, as much as you can. Check in and go, okay, I don't even feel my breath. Have a little laugh with yourself and be conscious of breathing. And know that you can only breathe the way that you're thinking. You can only think the way that you're breathing. They are together in rhythm. They're together in rhythm. So you want to have that rhythm in the way that you think, in the way that you process. And when you feel yourself going down that rabbit hole of feeling like your life would have been better if this person never existed, or if this person over here wouldn't have said what they said, and all that rabbit hole of all these things that would have happened if this would have happened, and blah, 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 blah. And you catch yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, that's just going on inside of my head. That's not happening out here. I'm by myself in this room and I'm just upset. You keep hitting the replay button, but you don't have to. But you think you should. I gotta watch that one more time. I gotta see that person hurt me one more time. One more time, let me see it. Because if you keep watching it, you will become the thing that you disdain. You too will want to hurt someone. Isn't it weird how this happens? But you know what I'm saying. I'm saying this to you because we all want quality of life. And if you have a better quality of life, and I have a better quality of life in here and here, we can start to imagine world peace. Because we have people who are willing to change themselves. They're not willing to tell everybody, you're wrong and you're bad and you're bad. And this is why we don't have world peace, because you exist, because you exist, and because you exist. We're going to be like, wait a minute. The only way we're going to get to world peace is if I work on myself. I work on myself and I change. It might influence other people for them to change too. Because as you change and you become more peaceful, you become stronger. You become stronger. You can bear things out in a way where it doesn't knock you over so quickly. We're mountain climbers this year. We're facing our own personal Mount Everest, where it's so difficult to breathe. And it's so scary because now we have to climb down the other side. Yeah, life is a little scary. But you got you. And every time you say that you don't trust you deny your intuition. Just remember, when people say, well, I don't trust myself, I make really bad decisions. But at the end of the day, you got you. And if you don't trust you, you know it's very difficult to be asking other people to trust you. I say this a lot. There's a big difference between making mistakes and being untrustworthy. I make bad decisions. It doesn't make me untrustworthy. Not to myself. I know I made an error in judgment. I went too far, or I didn't go far enough, whatever it is. And I work it out with me. Because I have me. You have you. Never think that's second best. People are like, yeah, but I want to have somebody else. Okay, but you still have you. Why would you deny that? You still have you. Have as many people as you want, but you have you. And at the end of the day, when you're crawling into bed, whether you crawl into bed with somebody or not, when you go to sleep, you're by yourself. You're by yourself. You're on your own. with your thoughts. So treat yourself to more inner peace throughout this whole year. So our word for this month is the word intuition. So when you ponder on it, you're going to find yourself going, well, let me figure out what that means. And then have a little laugh with yourself because it won't work. Well, how do you deal with it? What is it? How do you start? You start by practicing quiet. You start by helping yourself to feel what's going on inside of you. And when you're with somebody else, know that what you feel inside of yourself, you can probably feel in them. When you can feel what's inside of yourself better, you can feel what's going on in other people better. So learning to be quiet, like in what I do for my work, has taught me to listen to myself better so I can hear what's going on in the other person. We don't really have a lot of differences as human beings. We're just not all going through the same thing at the exact same time. So I made the saboteur of intuition intellectualism. I love a good intellect, don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about that part of us where we think, I got to figure it out. I got to know the answer. And doing this oppositional, well, this is what I learned and this is the way it is. And da, 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 da. Intellectualism will tell you all the things that somebody else has already learned. Here's processes. Intuition is all about the unknown. And every time you have an idea that you didn't have before, you never heard before, came from your intuition. Spirituality cannot be intellectualized. When people try to intellectualize spirituality, it becomes religious opposition. Stay away from that this month. Stay with intuiting what is spirituality. And remember that the word religion originally was realization. Let us work together to realize the truth, which is always going to be love. Always. So we're going to do 3 Ohms together today in just a moment. But before we do, I just want you to help yourself to be really quiet wherever you are. Really, really quiet. Ohming is much more deep than I can express to you. It's a very deep, deep process. So let us do 3 Ohms together to unify us. And as we leave one another, we leave in the spirit of Om. 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 Thank you so much for being here today and sharing time and space with me. I really appreciate it. Peace be with you. Namaste. And if you would like to stay for a few questions and answers, well, I don't know how many answers I have. I would be willing to take questions. Be happy to do that. Otherwise, till we meet again. Peace.
Captain?
Yeah. Oh, Deborah, yes.
Yes. Interesting. That, of course, here I am with my analytical mind.
Of course.
course. Why
Um, and that there we have that second gut in our stomach. You've heard that expression, right?
Sure.
And then you said that's where we're psychic.
Mhm.
And so then that's why animals are psychic, because they have the solar plex open, the gut chakra open, or the solar plex. My
Mhm.
cat came in and started meowing at me right when I asked that question.
That's cute. Yes.
So that's how we became human beings. In other words, that we developed the cerebral cortex. Or my question is, yes, does that all follow?
That was adorable. What is your question, dear?
I don't know if it's so much a question as wanting to know that my thinking is okay.
Your thinking's always okay. You're a loving person.
Yeah. So, okay, you know that because we have the second gut in our stomach, as they call it,
Mhm.
then you said that's where where the psychic comes from.
Well, but today we didn't talk about that, but you and I had a conversation about that. And yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. And
No,
so,
no, you haven't done anything to be sorry about.
so then animals, you said that animals are psychic.
Mhm.
And so that's because they have that second brain in their gut as well.
I suppose so. Yes.
Sorry, that was difficult and it didn't need to be.
Oh, Deborah, look at me. Not at all. Not at all. Your questions are perfectly valid. Absolutely. It was just more, you had a little commentary in there, and I just wanted to make sure that I was hearing the question that was inherent, that was there. That was all. You never have to apologize. You're a really good human, and you're always in that space of wanting to know more. And I respect that about you. I do. Anybody else want to make a comment or have a question? Oh, boy, it's a loud airplane we have here, isn't it? Sorry about that. The other thing that I can just say to you is that everybody overanalyzes. Everybody does. Deborah, you're certainly not the only one. I mean, there's not a person that we're looking at that doesn't overanalyze. Every single person does. We all do. It doesn't make us bad. We don't have to apologize for that. Not at all. We're all curious in some form or another to go deeper, to have more peace within us. And it's just important that sometimes that we just kind of help ourselves to move away from figuring it out, and just helping ourselves to intuitive. So like when you're talking about the second gut and different things like this, and how intuition and the difference between psychism and intuition, you are going to ask yourself questions about it, of course. But what we want to do is just kind of not think about, you don't want to look at it like, am I right? Or am I on the right track? What you might want to do more than that is just kind of ask yourself, that's really interesting. Let me ponder on that for a while and just see how I feel with it. And let your intuition sort of like guide you to a deeper understanding of it, so that you actually enjoy the process better. And it helps to release you from wondering, am I right about this or not? Am I wasting my time in thinking like that? Do I need to be corrected? You don't need to be corrected. You don't need to be corrected. You're always in there in a space where you want to go deeper within yourself. And that's a really good thing. But Deborah was demonstrating for us how we all do this. We all do this. We all are like okay, what's the right way of meditating? And then we, you know, how many times with meditation we go, okay, let me figure out exactly how to do that. Am I sitting properly? Am I breathing the right way? Am I doing this? Am I doing all of that? You know, we're so busy trying to do it the right way that we don't just fall into it and allow ourselves to practice, and knowing that the practice will teach us. If you've ever like played a musical instrument, you know that you learn to read music, and you know you're learning to play the piano, and you hit wrong notes, and you know, and when I was learning to play the piano, my teacher hit my hands with a ruler. It wasn't an obscene thing back then. Now it is, which gosh, yeah, it wasn't a good thing. But you know, to insist on doing it the right way, but it's easier to help each other to know that there is process, of course, analytical process, but we want to always include our intuitiveness, our ability to feel our way through the practice. So what you were talking about, I just want to encourage you with that process. And I want to encourage you to feel your way through what you're sensing about the animals and how they are and how we are. You're definitely on the right path. You're definitely doing what you need to do, and you're doing it in Deborah's style, not in anybody else's style. And that's the way that we need to be. We need to be ourselves, who we are, and do it in that way. And then it makes it easier to respect one another. You know, that other people do it in a different way. But ultimately, we want to get to a place to where we practice our intuition, which means letting go of being right or even being wrong. Because like I use this example about the piano because, you know, it can make you not want to do things if you feel like you're doing wrong, or you're being chided, or being made an example of, or something like this, you know, it's very negative, and we get to miss out on a lot of good things because teachers, people who've been teaching us, well, they don't realize it. They're just older students. That's all. They're just older students, you know, and you can be an older student in one area and a much younger student than your students over here. You could be much younger than them in this area over here. So I just say this because we all try to do things right when it's best to do things in a good way. What are your intentions? Your intentions were you wanted clarity, or I feel that was your intention. You wanted clarity. And who doesn't? And I love it that you spoke up. Is there anyone else that wants to speak up? All right, then why don't we just let ourselves remember that we are letting go of being right or wrong, right or wrong, and we are committed to intuiting where we need to be. Okay? All right. Peace, everyone.